I'm Louise Hemmings, 79 years old, and this morning started like most do, quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the creaking floor near the back window. I sat at the kitchen table with my tea and pill organizer, open heart meds, blood pressure, arthritis. I've been taking care of this house by myself ever since Howard passed 9 years ago and today. Like every other day, I wondered how much longer I'd keep doing it alone before we go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to carry more than your fair share of family burdens. My story doesn't start with anything dramatic. No fireworks, no betrayal, just a call from my son Ethan on a Tuesday morning. He always starts off warm. "Hey Mom, how are you doing today?" And I always say same as yesterday. But I know his voice. I know when he's calling, just to talk, and when he's working up to ask for money. Ethan's an insurance adjuster. He does fine for himself. His wife Brianna works at a travel agency. They live in a 4-bedroom with 2 cars in the driveway. But somehow they're always short. House repairs, credit card bills, slow season at the agency. There's always something. I'd spent decades working as the head accountant for the city. People used to listen when I spoke, but these days, most folks see an old woman with time to spare and money saved up. After Howard died, I stopped making big plans. We were going to travel. We had it all mapped out. Then he was one, and so were those plans. Instead, I stayed, took up gardening, started saving not for anything in particular, but because that's what Howard and I always did. Save for the future, for rainy days, for Ethan. He came by that afternoon. Brianna wore heels too high for our walkway and handed me a plastic bakery pie. Ethan hugged me a little too tight, told me I looked beautiful. I knew what was coming. He didn't even wait until the tea was poured. We're in a bit of a bind. "Mom, just $2,000. We'll pay it back next month." "They never do. They haven't for years." I stopped asking. The disappointment hurt more than the money after they left. I called Ruth. She's been my best friend since high school. Retired now, used to run a private investigator's office with her son sharp as ever, and never afraid to call things what they are. "They hit you up again." $2,000, I said. "You need to stop," she said. "They don't see you as their mother, Louise. They see you as a wallet. But he's my son, my only one." What else am I supposed to do that night? I found an old photo in the drawer by my recliner. Ethan in his kindergarten shirt missing a front tooth. Howard kneeling beside him with one hand on his shoulder. We'd saved for his education, his future. We thought that would make all the difference. I went to bed with a strange tightness in my chest. I told myself it was the weather by morning. I could barely stand without clutching the counter. I took my pills, sat down, waited for it to pass. It didn't. And when Ruth knocked on the door 2 days later, she took one look at me and said, "You're going to the hospital." I didn't argue. Not that time. I didn't know then that the next call I'd get from Ethan wouldn't be a check-in or even a get-well wish. It would be something else entirely, and it would change everything. The pain in my chest hadn't gone away. It was a dull ache, steady and stubborn, and I ignored it for too long. Ruth took one look at me when she walked through the door and didn't bother asking questions. She helped me gather my coat, grabbed my handbag from the hook by the kitchen, and we were in her car within minutes. By the time I saw the hospital ceiling, I barely remembered getting there. I came to in a quiet room with white walls and the rhythmic beeping of a monitor beside me. A man in a white coat stood over me, his voice calm but serious. "Mrs. Hemmings, you've had a heart attack. You were brought in just in time." I could barely speak. My throat felt dry and rough. I managed to ask how long I'd been there. "Nearly 24 hours, the doctor said. We placed you in a medically induced coma to relieve strain on your heart. You're stable now, but you'll need long-term care." The words sank in slowly. A heart attack, a coma. Long-term care. I'd always handled things myself, groceries, appointments, bills. I'd never felt fragile until that moment. He continued gentler this time. You'll need rest medication, and depending on how you respond, possibly surgery. We'll be monitoring you closely. After he left, the nurse brought lunch I had no appetite for. I pushed the food around on the tray until Ruth arrived. She came straight to my side and sat without a word. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight. You scared me. I gave a weak smile. I'm sorry. You should have gone to the doctor days ago. I was going to. Tomorrow doesn't count, Louise. Tomorrow nearly cost you your life. She sat with me for hours. Told me about the new neighbors who planted tulips too early. Gave me updates from the local paper. Tried everything she could to distract me from the weight in my chest, both physical and not. The next morning, Ethan showed up. No flowers, no card, just a stiff kiss on the cheek and a chair pulled too far from the bed. How are you feeling? I've been better, I said. He nodded, stared at the floor a bit, then looked up with a forced brightness. Dr. Morrison told us you'll need some help once you're discharged. I waited. Brianna and I were talking. Maybe it's time you consider moving into assisted living. Just for a little while. Somewhere with people who can keep an eye on you. There it was. I didn't respond right away. He took that as hesitation. It's just your house is too big, and you'll need constant supervision. We thought it might be the best thing. I'm not going to a facility, I said quietly. But Mom, I'll hire a nurse. I'll manage. It's expensive. I have savings. He hesitated. That's when I saw it, the look. He hadn't come to help. He'd come to find out how much he could control. I'll need to pay your bills while you're here, he said casually. Where do you keep your account info? In my desk at home. There's a folder. His eyes lit up a little too quickly. Great. I'll go get it today. Take care of everything for you. He left not long after that. Ruth walked in just as he was leaving my robe and a book in her arms. They exchanged a few words at the door. When she reached my bedside, she didn't sit right away. What did he want? I didn't answer right away. Money, I said finally. Said he'd handle my bills. Did you tell him where it is? I told him the folder's in the desk. Ruth's mouth tightened. She knew, like I did, that there was more than just utility bills in that house. There was a second account, my real savings, nearly $200,000 tucked away for emergencies. The only two people who knew about it were me and Ruth. It's not in the folder, I assured her. Good, she said. Later that afternoon, Ruth helped me change into my robe, combed my hair, read aloud to me for a while. When she left, I felt steadier. The next day, Ethan returned with Brianna. She had a bouquet this time and a voice like syrup. We were so worried, she said, brushing her lips against my cheek. How are you, sweetheart? Recovering? Ethan pulled a chair beside the bed, same as before. We looked through your paperwork, he said. Paid the house note and the utilities already. Thank you. But we noticed something strange, Brianna added. There's not much left in the main account. Only a few thousand. I have insurance, I reminded them. That'll cover most of the treatment. Yes? But what if there's surgery? Or rehab? Or extended care? I told you I'm not going to a facility. But where's the rest? She asked, more direct now. You've always been careful with money. There must be savings. Everything I have is in that account. They looked at each other. Ethan leaned forward. Maybe you just forgot. That's normal. At your age. I met his eyes. I remember perfectly well where my money is. They didn't press the issue in front of me again, but the tension lingered. Their visits became more frequent, always short. Always with gifts. Always with two bright smiles. Ruth still came every evening. One night, she arrived with her brow furrowed. I went by the house. The study's been turned inside out. Drawers open. Papers everywhere. I closed my eyes. They're looking for the savings book. Did you leave it out? No. It's in the safety deposit box. You're listed as trustee. She exhaled sharply. Good. But it's disgusting, Louise. You're lying in a hospital bed and they're treating your home like a treasure hunt. A few days later, their visits shifted again. Less warmth, more urgency. We found a wonderful rehab clinic, Ethan said, out in Great Neck. Top of the line. I'm going home, I told him. But you can't be alone. I won't be. I'll get help. Help costs money, Brianna said, not bothering to smile this time. I'll use my savings. She folded her arms. We know about the other account, the one with 200,000. I didn't respond. You've been hiding it, she continued. That money could help all of us. It's for my care, not for your vacations. You won't even be able to use it, she said coldly. Not in your condition. Enough, Ethan said. Let's talk later, Mom. They left abruptly. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, uneasy. Ruth came that night and I told her what happened. She was quiet for a long time. They're planning something, she said. I know. The next morning, she walked into my room carrying a cloth tote. They're packing suitcases, she said, loading the car. Big ones. I said nothing. They're not going on a vacation, she added. They're running. She didn't wait for me to respond. I'll find out where. And that's where we left it, her heading out the door, me sitting in a hospital bed with a knot in my stomach and a weight in my chest that no medicine could touch. I didn't know yet what they were planning. But I knew one thing. They were going after everything I had, and I was done letting them take it. Ruth came back the next morning with a canvas bag full of clothes, a paperback from my nightstand, and a quiet kind of fury in her eyes. She didn't speak at first, just helped me into a fresh robe and brushed my hair back with slow, gentle strokes. When she finally sat down, she looked tired. They're gone, she said. I watched them load their luggage into the car. Big suitcases, too many for just a weekend. I didn't say anything. I'd already guessed. The last visit told me more than either of them intended. They're not coming back soon, she added. I think they've left town. The nurse brought my phone later that day. Ruth had taken it home, charged it, and returned it with a charger tucked neatly in the side pocket. There were a few missed calls, mostly numbers I didn't recognize, and one message from Ethan sent the day before. It was only one line, "We've flown away taking all your money." Bye. I stared at the screen for a long time. Ruth was standing near the window, but when I didn't speak, she turned around. What is it? I handed her the phone. She read the message, then slowly sat down beside me. Her hand clenched tightly around the edge of the chair. Then the phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Brianna. A photo. The two of them sitting in airplane seats, glasses of champagne raised. Big smiles. Below it, a line of text. Thanks for the sponsorship, Grandma. You're finally good for something. Ruth didn't speak right away. Neither did I. When I finally found my voice, it came out soft. They got into the second account. How she asked. The debit card was in the metal box under the stairs. I thought it was safer there than in my purse. And the PIN, I nodded slowly. I wrote it in my address book. I disguised it as a phone number. It took me a few tries to log into the banking app. My fingers were shaking. When the account loaded, I just stared. The balance had dropped from just under 200,000 to a little over 300. Ruth swore under her breath. Her voice was low but filled with rage. She stood and paced the small space between the bed and the door, then turned back. "We should call the police." "No," I said quickly. "Louise, I can't," I said. "He's my son. That doesn't matter. He stole from you. He left you here with nothing." I didn't answer. Ruth sat back down and took a deep breath. "If you won't call the police, then we'll do something else. But we're not letting this slide." I looked at her. She didn't flinch. "What do you mean?" "You remember my nephew Edwin lives in Hawaii, now works security at a hotel." I nodded. "He's smart. He's got connections. If they're in Hawaii, he can find them." I didn't ask how. I just let her go. She left the room and came back half an hour later, her eyes sharper than before. "Honolulu," she said. "They flew first class. Checked into a luxury resort. Edwin's already on it." I sat up a little straighter. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. "Now we make sure they don't enjoy a single minute of that trip." That night, I slept better than I had since coming to. Not because anything had been fixed, but because I knew Ruth wouldn't let this end here. The next day started like the one before. Nurse's blood pressure checks a tray of oatmeal I didn't touch. By early afternoon, Ruth walked in with a quiet hum in her voice. "Edwin spoke to the hotel manager," she said. "They're definitely there. Ocean view suite, spa access, the whole package." I nodded. "He's going to start with small things. Nothing serious, just enough to make the stay uncomfortable." I didn't ask for details. That evening, Ruth pulled her chair close to my bed and leaned in. "Tomorrow morning, the air conditioner in their room will start acting up. Middle of the night, drops the temperature way down. The remote won't work. Then it'll fix itself before the tech arrives." I let that image sit in my mind. "And that's just the beginning," she added. "Let them think it's bad luck." She squeezed my hand before she left. The next day, Ruth arrived earlier than usual. She was smiling when she walked in. "They didn't sleep," she said. 3 a.m. The room felt like a freezer. Maintenance was called. By the time he arrived, everything was back to normal. I didn't say anything. Today, she continued, breakfast was delivered to their room. A tray full of things they didn't order. Brianna's allergic to hot sauce. The eggs were covered in it. I could almost picture it. I didn't want to smile, but I did. Later that day, I was cleared for short walks down the hallway. The nurses helped me into slippers and wrapped me in a shawl. I took it slow, one step at a time. When I got back to the room, Ruth was waiting with the tablet. Edwin had sent photos, one of Ethan at the front desk, red-faced, and gesturing at the concierge. Another of Brianna poolside, blotchy and scowling. "They're still in denial," Ruth said, "but they're wearing down." She pulled a notepad from her purse and wrote something down. "Tonight, their credit cards disappear. Edwin has a friend at the restaurant. Brianna's purse will slip off a chair. By morning, the cards will be blocked." I felt the first real pang of doubt. "Ruth?" She shook her head gently. "Nothing illegal. Just enough to remind them that choices have consequences." That night, I lay in bed and thought of my husband, Howard. Of all the years we spent building a life, putting away what we could, dreaming of travel. And now, Ethan and Brianna were using that money to sip cocktails by the beach. But not for long. Tomorrow, the cards would stop working, and their perfect vacation would start to fall apart. That morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing on the side table. Ruth's voice came through steady and cheerful. "Louise, Operation Card Swipe, went off without a hitch. Edwin just called." "They're rattled." She paused, then added, "Want the full update now or after breakfast?" I said, "Now." They went to dinner at the hotel's restaurant, filet mignon, champagne, the works. When the bill came, Brianna reached for her wallet, and that's when she discovered her credit cards were gone. I sat up straighter. They searched everything. Had the waiter check the floor, the manager double-check their room tab. Edwin made sure the hotel system flagged their suite as ineligible for charges some kind of technical error. I could almost picture it Ethan trying to keep calm, Brianna flipping through her purse, her face growing tighter. They had to pay in cash, Ruth said. They looked like they'd swallowed lemons. That afternoon, Ruth stopped by with a plastic grocery bag full of fruit and a folder of my medical paperwork. She pulled a chair close to the bed and opened the tablet. A fresh photo from Edwin showed Ethan at the concierge desk speaking with forced patience. Another showed Brianna by the pool, arms crossed, her sunglasses pushed up into her hair. "They're starting to fray," Ruth said, scrolling. "Edwin thinks they've got maybe a few thousand left in cash, but that won't last long." I leaned back against the pillow and closed my eyes. Ruth's voice softened. "How are you feeling?" "Stronger," I said. Dr. Morrison came in the next morning during the blood pressure check. He looked over my chart and nodded with approval. "If this keeps up," he said, "we can talk about discharging you within the week." I looked out the window. The breeze was swaying the branches in the garden outside the hospital's courtyard. A bird dipped low toward a bench, then flew off again. He glanced at Ruth. "Will she have support at home?" "I'll take her in," Ruth said, without hesitation. "I've already got the room ready." The doctor nodded. "That would make the transition easier. You'll still need rest, light activity, regular checkups." "I understand," I said. After he left, Ruth stayed quiet for a long moment. "Do you want to go back to your house?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "Not right away." Her voice softened. "Then you come home with me, as long as you need." She stood and reached for her phone. Now Edwin said it's time for Phase 3. That evening we spoke with Edwin through a video call. He appeared on Ruth's tablet screen sitting in a sunny office near the resort. His sleeves were rolled up, his face serious. "Good to see you both," he said. "They've just tried using the ATM at a nearby bank. Card was declined." "What happened?" Ruth asked. "I flagged the account as suspicious through a contact at the bank. Officially, it's under review. Funds are frozen until verification clears." "Will they find out it was you?" "No. They'll think it's just the bank being cautious. It'll take days to fix, and with the time zone gap, they're already frustrated." I watched him for a moment. "What's next?" He smiled. "They've paid for the hotel room through the end of the week. After that, they'll be asked for another form of payment, and they'll try cash. But once that runs out..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The next morning, Ruth helped me walk down to the hospital garden. She found a shady spot under a tree, laid a blanket across the bench, and helped me settle in with a cup of tea. "You're looking more like yourself today," she said, sitting beside me. "It's the air," I said quietly. She nodded. "And the justice." Later that afternoon, Edwin messaged again. The hotel had just informed Ethan and Brianna that the card they used at check-in had been flagged. They could either pay again with a valid method or check out. "They're scrambling," Edwin said over the phone. They argued with the manager for 20 minutes, eventually handed over cash for a few more nights. But they're almost out. That evening, Ruth brought the tablet to my room. Edwin had sent over new photos. One showed Ethan standing at the bank, arms crossed, face tight. Another showed Brianna sitting on a bench with her head in her hands. "They haven't figured it out yet," Ruth said, lowering the tablet. "They won't," I said. 2 mornings later, Edwin called again. "They reported their passports missing," he said. "Said the room's safe had been tampered with." Ruth raised an eyebrow. "Tampered with?" "One of the housekeepers left the safe open accidentally, or so it will appear. The passports and return tickets are missing." I felt a chill settle in my chest. "Will the hotel investigate?" "Yes. But it's complicated. If word gets out that the guests' documents were stolen, it could damage the hotel's reputation. They'll tread carefully." Ruth spoke before I could. They'll try to imply Ethan and Brianna sold the passports themselves. That's not our doing. No, Edwin agreed. But it works in our favor. With no ID, no return flight, and no funds, they're grounded. He hesitated. There's one more thing. I filed an anonymous tip with the local police. Said there might be financial fraud involved. Didn't name names. Just enough to raise eyebrows. I looked down at my hands. My palms felt cold. Ruth watched me carefully. Louise? I'm fine. You don't have to say yes to the next step. Not yet. I nodded slowly. But inside, I knew there was no turning back. By the next day, Edwin called again. His voice was steady. They tried to leave, he said. Slipped out through a side exit with their luggage. Security stopped them. They're being held in a staff lounge while the hotel decides what to do. Ruth leaned closer to the screen. Time to make your entrance. Edwin nodded. I'll approach them as a consultant. Offer a way out. They're scared. They'll listen. He looked directly into the camera. Louise, if I do this, it has to be all or nothing. I'll ask for the full amount back. No negotiations. I took a breath. Do it. Ruth reached over and took my hand. Once he talks to them, she said quietly, this turns a corner. I nodded, and that's how we left it. Edwin walking into the hotel lounge to meet the people who stole my future, and me sitting in a small hospital room, waiting to find out if anything could ever be made right. Edwin called just after sunrise the next day. Ruth answered, but she put him on speaker so I could hear everything. They agreed, he said. I laid out the terms, and they signed. I sat up in bed, pulling the blanket across my lap. What exactly did they agree to? They'll return the full amount, what's left of it. In exchange, I'll help them clear things with the hotel, get their passports reissued, and make sure they get home without trouble. Ruth looked over at me. How much is left? About 180, Edwin said. They've already spent 20. Flights, the hotel, restaurants, taxis. They really didn't hold back, Ruth muttered. Edwin cleared his throat. It was Brianna who forced the issue. Ethan wanted to bargain, offered half. She wasn't having it. Said she wasn't getting locked up in Hawaii because her husband was too proud. I let out a breath. So, the bank account's being reversed? Yes. I walked them through the process. I'm listed as a temporary agent on the call. The transfer is being processed now. Should be in your account by tomorrow. Thank you, Edwin, I said quietly. You don't have to thank me, he replied. No one should get away with what they did. Not to their own family. After the call ended, Ruth handed me my tea and sat across from me by the window. The garden outside was starting to turn with the season. A few yellow leaves clung to the branches like they weren't quite ready to let go. I never thought we'd get the money back, I said. You didn't do this alone, she reminded me. You had help, and you stayed strong. That evening, Ruth and I watched the sun go down from her front porch. She brought out the tablet and checked the banking app. The balance hadn't changed yet, but the confirmation from the bank had arrived. They're leaving the island tomorrow morning, Edwin said later that night. I booked them a 3-leg route through Dallas and Chicago. Economy all the way. Ruth chuckled. Nice touch. They'll be back in Greenville by the end of the week. The next morning, I stood on Ruth's back deck and watched the wind move through the tall grass behind her house. The air felt different. Not lighter exactly, but more still. Like the dust had finally started to settle. That afternoon, the deposit notification arrived. Funds received. Ruth read from the screen. $180,000, back where it belongs. I nodded. Later that day, I met with Dr. Morrison for a follow-up. He reviewed the chart, asked how I'd been sleeping, checked my pulse twice, just to be sure. You're recovering well, he said. Better than I expected, honestly. The stress seems to have lifted. I've had help, I said. When we got home, Ruth made coffee. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and leaned in. Now that the money's back, what are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. I can't go back to that house, I said finally. Too much of it is tied to before. Ruth nodded. So sell it. I was thinking maybe a move, somewhere new. She waited. I always wanted to see Hawaii, not just for a week. To actually live by the water, hear the ocean when I wake up. I know a guy, she said, smiling. Security expert? Local connections? I smiled. Would you come with me? She didn't hesitate. Someone's got to keep an eye on you. That night, I walked around the guest room with a notebook in hand. I made a list of what I wanted to keep, what could be donated, and who I might need to call about the house. I didn't write Ethan's name once. The following day, Edwin sent one last video. It showed Ethan and Brianna walking through the Honolulu airport, dragging 2 scuffed suitcases behind them. Brianna wore sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. Ethan kept his head down. They're on their way back, Edwin said. Should arrive late tonight. I watched the screen until the footage ended. Then I set the tablet down and folded my hands in my lap. Later, Ruth made a call to a realtor in Greenville. I listened as she asked about timing inspections paperwork. When she hung up, she looked at me. They said the market's strong. You'll get a good price. The next morning, Ethan called. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Mom, he said. His voice sounded tired. The police were just at our house. They had questions about the trip, about the money. I know. What did you tell them? The truth. He paused. You didn't have to do that. I did. Mom, it wasn't like what you think. We weren't trying to hurt you. You took the money while I was in the hospital. You left me nothing. I was going to return it. After the beach. After the lobster and champagne. He didn't answer. I got the message, Ethan. I said. I saw the photo. I know what I meant to you. You don't understand. I understand more than you think. There was a long silence. Then his voice smaller. What happens now, I don't know. That's up to the court. You can stop this. You can tell them it was a misunderstanding. I already gave my statement. Another pause. You're my mother. I was. He didn't call again. By the end of the week, my house was on the market. The realtor handled the photos, the listing, the calls. Within 10 days, we had 2 offers. I accepted one without hesitation. Ruth found us a place on Oahu. Modest but clean, 2 bedrooms, a small porch that faced the sea. Edwin says it's quiet, she told me, and walkable. I nodded. That's all I want. That weekend we packed what we needed and gave away the rest. 3 weeks later, we boarded a plane, just the 2 of us. The sun was already setting when we landed. The air smelled like salt and frangipani, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. The call from Mr. Burrows came early just after breakfast. Ruth and I were sitting on the lanai sipping coffee, the ocean breeze folding gently through the screens. They've filed a report, he said. Your son and daughter-in-law. I looked over at Ruth. She raised an eyebrow. What kind of report, I asked. They claimed their passports and credit cards were stolen in Hawaii. Standard procedure, the Honolulu police forwarded the information to Greenville. I didn't speak right away. Now the local department wants to talk to you, Mr. Burrows continued. They're asking questions about the bank transfers. Ruth leaned in toward the phone. What does that mean for Louise? It means someone's going to piece things together if we don't control the narrative. I suggest we meet. We scheduled the visit for the next morning. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about what I'd said to Ethan during that last phone call. about the way his voice cracked when I told him it was in the hands of the law. At 10 sharp, Ruth and I walked into the police station. Mr. Burrows was already waiting by the front desk. His posture was steady calm. Detective Paul Higgins greeted us a few minutes later. He led us to a small interview room, wood-paneled, no windows, a pot of fake ferns in the corner. "Mrs. Langford," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "Thank you for coming in." I nodded. Ruth sat to my right. Mr. Burrows opened his notebook. "I'll get straight to it." The detective continued. "We received a report involving your son and daughter-in-law. They claimed their identification and financial tools were stolen during their recent trip. But what caught our attention was the large transaction, $200,000 moved from your account to theirs." Mr. Burrows gave a light cough. "My client is prepared to explain." I folded my hands. "Yes, Ethan took the money while I was in the hospital." Without permission, Higgins asked. "Yes. Would you classify that as theft?" "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "I didn't report it." And he returned it. Higgins made a note. "Why didn't you report it at the time? He's my son." "And now I don't want charges," I said, "but I want the truth known." Higgins looked up. So he took it without asking. "You didn't give access." But later, he transferred the funds back. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I gave him no choice." His eyes narrowed. "Care to elaborate?" I looked at Mr. Burrows. He gave me a small nod. So I told him about how Ethan and Brianna visited the hospital, about their sudden interest in my finances, about the documents they'd searched for, the money, the lies. Then I told him how Ruth had reached out to Edwin, how Edwin found them in Hawaii, how we'd created enough pressure to make them give it all back. I was careful with the words. I said nothing illegal had been done. No hacks, no threats, just circumstances. Detective Higgins listened without interrupting. He jotted down a few things, then closed his notebook. "I'll be honest," he said. "It's messy. Your son claims he had your consent, that you gifted the money while unwell." "That's not true. We'll follow up with the bank, the hotel, maybe the airline," he said. "But I appreciate your honesty. It helps." After we left, Mr. Burrows walked with us back to the car. "That went better than expected," he said. "But don't be surprised if there's more questioning later, especially if Ethan tries to escalate." Back at the house, I took my shoes off and sat quietly on Ruth's couch. My chest felt tight. Not pain, just a pressure I couldn't name. "You okay?" Ruth asked. "Yes," I said. That evening, Ethan called again. I let it ring twice, then answered. "Mom," he said, "what did you tell them? The truth?" "I can't believe you'd do this." "You already did," I said, "when you walked away with everything." His voice rose. "We were going to give it back. No, you weren't. You sent a message. You made it clear." He went quiet, then barely above a whisper. "Is this how it ends?" "I don't know, Ethan. That's up to you." I hung up. 2 days later, Mr. Burrows called with news. "The Royal Hawaiian has filed fraud charges," he said. "Apparently, Ethan and Brianna attempted to leave without fully settling the bill. And the bank is reviewing the flagged transaction. There may be further action." "What now?" I asked. "You have a decision to make," he said. "You can stay quiet, or you can provide full testimony." That night, I walked the beach behind Ruth's house. The water was still. Moonlight lay over it like soft glass. In the morning, I made my decision. We met again with Detective Higgins that afternoon. I brought my phone with the saved messages, the photo from the airplane, the banking records, Edwin's correspondence. I handed them over. When I was done talking, the room felt very still. "You're sure?" Higgins asked. "You want this on record?" "Yes." All right, he said. As we left the station, Ruth rested her hand on my arm. You did the right thing. For the first time in weeks, I believed her. The official notice came in the mail 2 weeks after I gave my full statement. Ruth brought it in with the morning paper and laid the envelope next to my tea. It was from the Greenville Police Department. Inside was a formal letter. Ethan and Brianna Langford had been charged with grand larceny and financial fraud. Mr. Burrows called later that afternoon. The prosecutor is willing to discuss a leniency agreement, he said. They know the money was returned, and Ethan has no prior record. I waited. But they need your consent. Ruth sat beside me at the kitchen table. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. What would it mean, I asked. Probation instead of prison, Mr. Burrows said. Community service, mandatory financial counseling. Their record would show a conviction, but no jail time. You'd need to submit a statement requesting leniency. I stared out the window. The sky was overcast, the waves choppy beyond the garden fence. I need time, I said. Of course. That night, I thought about Ethan as a boy, his 8th birthday, the way he used to sit at the kitchen table with puzzles spread out in front of him. I thought about the man who had hugged me in the hospital, smiled, then stole everything I had. By morning, I had made my decision. I called Mr. Burrows. I'll support probation. Are you sure, he asked? Yes. Then I'll notify the court. The trial was held the following month in Greenville. Ruth came with me. We sat together on the left side of the courtroom. Ethan and Brianna sat with their attorney on the other side. Neither of them looked at me. The judge read through the charges slowly. Bank fraud, theft, deception during a medical crisis. Ethan's shoulders didn't move. Brianna sat rigid, her hands folded in her lap. When asked for a plea, they both answered guilty. The judge reviewed the details, the recovery of funds, my decision to support probation, the lack of prior criminal history. He nodded once, then looked at Ethan. Mr. Langford, he said, you are hereby sentenced to 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory restitution monitoring. Any violation will result in immediate revocation. Then he turned to Brianna. The same conditions apply. The gavel came down once. It was over. Ethan stood up slowly. He turned toward me as if he might say something. I didn't wait. I rose and walked out of the courtroom. Ruth followed a step behind. Neither of us spoke until we reached the parking lot. You did what you said you'd do, she said. Justice, not revenge, I replied. 3 months passed. My house in Greenville sold quickly. The real estate agent handled the details, sent the papers by courier, wired the money into my new account. Ruth and I settled into our new homes by the coast. We lived in small neighboring cottages with shared access to the garden that ran between them. Edwin stopped by most weekends, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just stories from the hotel. One Sunday afternoon, I sat on the back steps watching the tide roll in. Ruth came out with 2 glasses of iced tea and handed one to me. You've changed, you know, she said. How so? You breathe easier. I didn't answer, but I felt it, a stillness I hadn't known for years. I hadn't heard from Ethan or Brianna since the trial. A neighbor from Greenville mentioned seeing them doing community service wearing orange vests, clearing brush from a roadside near the park. I said nothing. I didn't need to. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the water, Ruth asked, Do you regret it? No, I said. I regret not seeing them clearly sooner, but not this. She nodded. That's enough. Inside, I still had the envelope with their sentencing documents. I hadn't opened it since the court date. I kept it in the drawer under the lamp next to an old photo of Howard. Sometimes I took out the picture. I never took out the papers. There are quiet evenings now when I sit on my small porch and watch the sky turn from gold to lavender over the water. Sometimes Ruth joins me settling into the chair beside mine with a soft sigh and a mug of tea between her palms. The sea breeze carries the scent of plumeria and the far-off sound of laughter from families walking along the shore. My days unfold gently morning walks along the sand, afternoons tending the flowers Ruth and I planted, evenings when Edwin brings fresh papaya or news from his latest workday. There is a peace here that I never found in Greenville, not even in the best years. I hear little about Ethan and Brianna now. A friend wrote that she saw them one morning picking up litter along a county road, working out their hours of community service. I don't wish them harm, but I don't wish for their company either. There are no more messages, no more calls. The ache of loss faded, replaced by a steadiness that feels both unfamiliar and right. Sometimes, when the quiet grows thick, I remember Howard, his gentle hand, his quiet faith. That kindness would always win out. For a long time, I thought the story of my life was about being a mother, a wife, a caretaker for everyone but myself. I see things differently now. Justice is not always loud or swift. Sometimes it comes as the chance to begin again in a place of your choosing with the people who truly care. Ruth and I built a kind of family here, one rooted in trust, not blood. We share meals, worries, and the odd rainy day. I am not alone even on the quietest afternoons. If you've listened this far, I hope you find your own kind of peace wherever you are. Sometimes it takes losing what you thought you couldn't live without to discover what you truly deserve. Don't be afraid to start over or to let go of those who only take from you. Life has a way of surprising us when we finally choose ourselves. If this story touched you, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. And if you'd like to hear more, I'd be honored if you stayed with me for the next journey.